Hello and welcome to Spiritual Gold, Embracing Trauma. This one's super near and dear to my heart because this was like the pivotal moment when all of a sudden warp gates were gonna work. Like this is the one that the first complex, really, or extra complex warp gate, which was a combination of various unconscious programs to really work on pulling various different parts of trauma back into my body. It was a process that normally take about an hour and it'd be really traumatic, really difficult. And I pull apart back in. It'd take about an hour. Could do maybe 3 if I was lucky in a day. And the warp gate made it to where I was doing like 10, 20, 30 in like a 5-minute period. And I was doing it throughout the day. And it was like really epic. And it's the one that when I was back in Flaming Gorge, by the Flaming Gorge River, near Dutch John, kind of in the middle of nowhere, which is very remote. And this is when I was like, I had done all this stuff up to this point, and I was like, I'm still not moving forward, not moving where I wanted to move forward. And it was kind of like got the vibe to like, okay, let's take the unconscious program and have them start do energy work and start stacking what the energy work can be done. Because the unconscious program, you can do a lot of things in parallel. So I stacked a whole bunch of energy work with that. And it was to pull in this trauma, to reduce that 1 hour process down into like seconds, or at least it can kick off in seconds. And so this is kind of the formation of this is the process you're going to go through, except for you're going to have all this extra stuff involved, especially just you've probably already gone through freedom through safety, or at least the beginning to where you've gotten that base level of it's safe to be safe. That's good to get that done first before coming into this trauma work. However, you can still do the trauma work and get major benefit like what I did, because it's kind of like almost the analogy, you take 2 steps forward and then 1 back. So you take 2 steps forward because trauma has such a component of like conflict, and there's a part of you, like there's a power of you that's getting locked up and taken away that you bring back. So even though you kind of are moving place to more safety, which if you haven't cleared those basic levels of safety, it's going to kind of amp things up and be a step back. You're still moving 2 steps forward because the trauma just causes such conflict, and it's a piece of you. So you're getting the benefit of bringing a piece of you back in, plus you're getting just all the kind of havoc that having a piece of you either outside or just separated from yourself causes. So that's why even if you hadn't done freedom through safety, you would still majorly move forward, but doing it ahead of time, you don't have that step back, so you're just going to skyrocket forward. All stuff that I didn't have. I didn't have my safety clearings at that moment. Like I said, this was the first one, like the first really complex warp gate that I was running, and it was all just pulling this trauma in. And it was in a very short period of time, probably less than 3 weeks, that all of a sudden my dreams radically changed, where I was having nightmares all the time. And that was just normal. I mean, since I was a little kid, I was just normal. I thought that's just how your dreams were. It was really intense, and it's just nightmares and kind of like a 80s horror movie. That was normal, to where all of a sudden that changed to where this just didn't happen anymore. Like that just wasn't my dreams. And it was kind of like, whoa, that really kicked in of like something's happening on an unconscious level. And like if you've seen that example of like, I mean, pretty much your entire world is happening through your unconscious. Everything comes through your unconscious, then goes to your subconscious, and then to your conscious mind to really like, oh wow, I thought of something, but your unconscious was thinking of it for a long time. And it holds all the death programs that kind of, if you've been doing a lot of personal development, a lot of spiritual work, and it feels like you're kind of circling the same toilet, is because you can't access these deep programs. But the trauma work really helps pull out a lot of the pain of that, or the charge of that. The freedom through safety course is really starting to go into those death programs. The trauma kind of wraps around those, so it's another component to that of pulling out some of what you call a death program. But more importantly, it helps you feel a lot better. So we're going to have a progression that we go through it that's been honed, that I didn't necessarily have to get to go through, but you're going to get to go through, that makes it a lot easier. And it'll also make it work faster, and also just like start really bringing you a lot of peace. Like that's the key thing. That's the first thing we're going to start working on, is really bringing you a lot of in the moment peace and getting you out of like kind of that traumatic response. Because what's happening is that at that certain age, and you have a lot more than you would think, there's like the really, really deep ones. And we're kind of building that bridge right now. We're going to, because all these bad feelings, like traumatic feelings, it's kind of like you have a bad, unsafe situation and it's somewhat too intense to fully handle, fully embody. And it's like a piece of you then takes up the mantle of like, okay, I'll encapsulate this emotion, pull it away from you, whether it's still inside your body, but kind of like pull it away, separate it from your consciousness, pull that away and like kind of embody that and hold that. But then the problem is that if we haven't gone back and pulled that back in, first it's a lack of us, it's a lack of our spirit that's pulled away. So it's a less of an energy there. But then it's also, it's stuck at whatever time that it was created. And it's also kind of wired to respond the same way, like a robot. So you get that input coming in your current life that matches when it was created. It kind of can kick it off, which you've probably experienced, where the emotional response you're having in a situation when you get like traumatized or triggered doesn't match what's happening. Like there could be a little bit of an input, but then it's like, rah! It's a big output that comes out from you, and it's not appropriate to the situation. It's not like, you know, horrible things happening and you're responding in anger and you're taking care of it, and everybody look and be like, whoa, wow, that makes a lot of sense as to those emotions that happened. It was really intense. It's more of like a little thing happens and we explode and people are like, whoa, what is that? Or you're like, whoa, what is that? Or why am I exploding? You might not verbally outward explode, but you feel the explosion inside and you're like, why am I so reacting to such a little stimulus? And that's because that part that's holding it, that's all it can do. And it was a very traumatic part. It was a very traumatic time, and it's stuck. And that's all it can do is respond that way. So the first part, we're going to start in the moment, the ones that are up, because a lot of the really, really big ones that only come out occasionally, and when they do, it's an explosion. It's more the ones you're going to be feeling throughout the day. And we're going to be rolling back those emotions, because we're going to start checking in. Any emotions you find is negative, we're going to check to see if there might be an underlying trauma that's connecting. It's just trying to express itself. We spend so much time pushing them away, but the problem is we're pushing them away and there's a piece of us in there. So it's like we're pushing a piece of us away. It's like almost like a version of self-hate. Like we don't want that, not realizing there's a part of us in there. It's just like the emotion we don't want, but when there's a piece of us wrapped in there, that causes a problem. Not to mention, I mean, there's other component of that, is that that part of you feels that. It feels that of like, I'm not wanted. I'm being pushed away. I'm like, they want to kill me. They want to get rid of me, right? So then that causes that to get like more of a desperate situation, which reinforces the most likely trauma that created that part, or that like little piece of you want to consider of it. It's not an actual piece of you, but just think of like an energetic piece that's floating out there, but it's not for you. It's like you don't have that under your power to where then you can use for whatever creation or how you want to move forward in your life. It's like these little pieces. And that's why I call it spiritual gold. Because if you get a hold of them, first of all, and you pull it back in, like you reclaim that, you just reclaimed a huge power source for yourself. Not to mention all that conflict, all that battle of like, I don't want it. And it's like, because it's battling you and you're battling it, you get to let go of all that conflict, which that's a win. Not to mention you get a piece of you back in, which is a superpower. So that is another, I mean, we got to think that these little pieces of us are extremely, extremely powerful. Like we're not in consciousness or in contact with just how unbelievably powerful we are. So even a little piece of us is a big, big deal. So getting them back is like spiritual gold. And we're going to start conditioning that process. Instead of having emotion come up and it happens to be attached to trauma and it's like, oh, another trauma, if I could just get rid of those, my life would be perfect. It's more of like, oh my gosh, I am about to collect some spiritual gold, and really start building a thing to where you're actively wanting to bring them in, because that's what's going to build that connection with your unconscious to where like, hey, yeah, we're going to start dealing with these. We want more of these to come up because we want to reclaim that gold, and we'll be able to go deeper and deeper and deeper, because those really, really deep, injured, hurt parts, young parts, are in a lot of are fearful. They're fearful that they're going to be killed. They're fearful they're going to, somehow we're going to remove them, which we can't. We absolutely can't do. So it's good when you're listening to this video, because those parts are hearing it too. You absolutely cannot get rid of a piece of you, nor would you want to ever. And these really younger parts hold a lot of spiritual energy, because when they're created, we're really in touch with our beingness of light. And so they got a big piece of that. Plus they had, it was like really a danger death situation. If they weren't getting taken care of, or if this event occurred, they would die. So there's a lot of charge for that. So we're building that bridge. That's part of it, like why we want to, like when we pull these pieces in, why it's going to be, you know, such a boost, and why it's spiritual gold. So we're going to start doing that. We'll walk through the process. The first step is kind of in the moment of really going to start unwinding a lot of these emotions and seeing that, wow, a lot of these are not about what's happening right now. There's just a triggering about what happened in the past. It's a piece of trauma that we're pulling in. So it's a little bit of spiritual gold that we're pulling in. Then we're also gonna have some meditations that kind of go deep year by year to help pull that in, like kind of build that, like, hey, we're actively pulling it in, because obviously you're throughout your day, you want to build that practice to where you have that tool, to where you get triggered, you're, you know, ignited in the moment, you can pull out of that, right? You want to have that. You want to kind of build just a general, just feeling a little more calm and just, you know, safe. I mean, you will have safety, but you won't have the trauma triggering, and you'll just feel like you're just more in control of what's happening, right? So you're building, we want to have you have that. And then we're going to go deeper into the meditations, because the meditations encourage, one, we'll be pulling more trauma in, right? And that's a spiritual goal. We're collecting our spiritual gold, but it's also building that bridge of, I want to experience more of that. And you wouldn't necessarily want to do the meditations first until you've gotten at least 3 or 4 days, or feel like you've got a handle that you're actually starting to deal with kind of these emotions, and that they're tracking back to a piece of trauma, and you're able to pull them in. And the warp gate is amazing, quick and fast. You'll be able to pull them in, and you'll start building that, like, oh yeah, I can handle these, right? And because I can handle these, I'm going to do the meditations to, one, pull in more. That's just spiritual gold. But then also start creating that invitation that I want more of these to show up, because you're only getting a very minor amount to the degree that you, and most of the time we're pushing them away, and that's just your unconscious check of, like, oh, can you deal with this? Oh, no, can't. Oh, can you deal with this? No, can't. We're starting to, you know, unwind to, oh yeah, I can deal with that. Yep, got that. We're doing the meditation saying, hey, I can take more, and then we'll be going back, pulling that in. And then from that, we will do some dream work. The next part is like going into your dreams and running that into in your dreams, which is just another level into your unconscious of saying, like, hey, yeah, I'm really ready to start pulling these traumas in, getting this spiritual gold. And then past that, we have a deeper meditation that goes really deep, using warp gates to go deeper, to really start pulling it in. And that's like the super invitation of, like, yeah, bring it in, you know. And then you'll keep doing that kind of in the present moment of just checking, right? And we'll have a whole process for that of, like, pulling it in, just so you're in your general day are just at peace and at calm, you know, because we are going really deep, but we don't want you traumatized. We don't want you in a traumatic place throughout the day. One, because it's miserable, but two, it also kind of pushes back what we're trying to create here. You know, it's kind of like, you don't want to go 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and create, like, we're going to have conflict. Because one, trauma or PTSD likes and feeds off of that, and we want to take away that feeding of that, because we're not recreating, because your brain's kind of got already some neural pathways in place of, like, it's going to want to create this, and we're unwinding that. So hence, we're always kind of bringing it back into the present moment, getting you out of any past kind of reactions. One, it feels way better, but two, it's also serving a purpose of helping all this kind of calm down, bringing it all in. And then finally, we'll do kind of, it's a deep meditation, but at a very targeted point. So it almost like creates a hole, right? Or creates like this, like, wedge into your consciousness, which then it builds that kind of, like, difference of, like, you've cleaned it so deep, like at this age, it makes all the other ones kind of look like, ooh, kind of come forth. And it's just a way to trigger more things to show up. It's just an invitation of, like, hey, I'm going to go really deep here, because then you have, like, such a peace and calm at this age. You'll notice at the other ages, you don't have that peace and calm. And that encourages that stuff to come up, which then we'll pull in. And then we'll also, you know, we'll keep going. You know, we'll use our unconscious, and we'll be a whole process with that of where we can go deeper and deeper to kind of trigger all this stuff coming up, because this is spiritual gold. We're mining for spiritual gold. So I want to get that really into your mind of, like, whenever one of these pieces come up and you're able to, like, use the warp gate to reclaim it, it's spiritual gold. I mean, one, you're going to pull that out of your system so you're not automatically responding from that trauma, but two, you're going to actually get a piece of you back in, which then you can have just way more power to go where you want it to go, to the dreams that you want to go, to the life that you want to live, and to the spiritual exploration you want to do and the gifts that you're bringing forward. So that's just kind of an overview of what's to come. We're going to jump in, we're going to install the warp gate, and then we're going to start explaining just that first step, which is going to bring you a lot more peace and give you like just the confidence that you have this tool to really start addressing some of this trauma, knowing where it's going, of how deep this is going to go and how much awesome this is going to bring in. So I just want you to have like kind of overview what's to come. And I'm super excited for you because this is such superpower. You got so many extra things added to this than I did it. But when I first did it, and kind of with all the doubt, not knowing that this was going to work, but it worked so amazingly and completely changed my life. This was the first thing where my life completely changed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a different person. And I keep on becoming a different person. And it's amazing to me. It's amazing to my friends as well. Of like, wow, that you used to not be like that. And I'm like, I know, it's so awesome. So you're going on that adventure, and let's jump into installing the warp gate. But until we talk again, which is hopefully very, very soon, because let's get installed that warp gate and start pulling in that kind of in the moment traumas, because it is such a life changer. But until we talk again, have a blessed day or a blessed night.